Hello, this is Dr. Tim Harrison. I'm here at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Religious and Philosophical Issues in Bristol, Virginia, also known as my house. And we're here this week to talk about the New Testament and the Roman Empire and how the Roman Empire influences the first century Palestine and influences the time of Jesus. It has tremendous influence on it. Before we get there, though, we've got to just finish up a little bit about the Greeks. Now, at this time, Alexander has died. He has split his kingdom into 4 parts by 4 generals, and the part that is sort of important to the New Testament will be the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. And these will rule over the area what is known as Syria or the Levant, and also over Egypt. Many of you already know a very famous Greek princess who helped rule over Egypt during this time by the name of Cleopatra. We make a mistake of thinking that she was Egyptian. She was not. She was Greek. And so they begin to rule the area that is Palestine, and as they do so, the Seleucids eventually become a little more powerful than the Ptolemies. They sort of push the Ptolemies out of Palestine, and then they take control. And during this time, there rises a ruler by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Now, Antiochus IV was his name. Epiphanes is a title that's given to him, which means a vision of God, because Antiochus believes that he is a deity. And so he's there during about 175 to 160 BCE, and while he is there, he begins to force Greek ideas unto the Jewish people. He begins to outlaw many of the Jewish traditions. He makes the temple, turns the temple into the temple of Zeus. He does something absolutely horrible. He sacrifices a pig and brings idols into the temple. And of course, you can imagine this makes the Jews very, very angry. This is what is referred to by the Jewish people and by Jesus in the New Testament as the abomination of desolation. And then many of the Jews, the holy ones, called the Hasidim, are martyred during this time because they started an uproar. And during this time, there becomes a very loyal part of Judaism. They were priests. They were known as the Maccabees. The first one we see is Judas Maccabees, who is also known as the Hammer. And they begin to make war with Greece. They begin to revolt. There are many, many battles that take place. And so what they do is they finally drive the Greeks out of the area. They rededicate the temple, and they start a brand new rededication feast during this time called Hanukkah. And I'm sure all of you know the story of Hanukkah, where there was only enough oil for one day, but miraculously it stretched over 8 days. Now, this also began a dynasty of Jewish and quasi-Jewish leaders called the Hasidim dynasty. And this is where we will get Herod the Great from as well. And so they begin to sort of rule. It's sort of independent, but there's a new guy on the block, a new bully on the block by the name of Rome, the Roman Empire. And pretty soon the Roman general Pompey marches into Palestine. Now, actually, as he marches down, he is opposed by the Seleucid generals, and it looks like he is about to get his clock cleaned. And Herod makes a decision to fight on the side of the Romans instead of the Greeks, and because of this, his family will be rewarded by the Romans when they actually take control of the area. Now, the Jewish people begin a sort of a client rule where they are allowed autonomy. Then this goes back because they helped the Romans. They are given this idea of independence where they were actually just vassals of Rome. And this begins Herod's rule. Herod the Great, who began many works in Jerusalem and in Palestine during this time. He began building the fortress, his own fortress called Masada. He builds a port city. There wasn't one in the Mediterranean on this coast, and he builds one called Caesarea. It's a very Roman Greek city, and he refurbishes the temple. In fact, the Temple Mount, the temple wall that he built is still there today. We know it today as the Wailing Wall. Now, he would die, of course. He died when Jesus was a child. He had 3 sons. He actually killed one of his sons because he thought he would try to take his kingdom away from him. But he had a son, Herod Philip, Herod Antiochus, and Herod Archelaus, all of which were his sons. Archelaus is the one that was killed. And so we know certain things about Herod. He was a strong ruler. He understood what it was to make people happy, but he was very, very paranoid. And later some of his descendants that also became the rulers of that time that we know of was Herod Agrippa and Herod Agrippa II. One of them dies from an infestation of worms that you read about in the book of Acts. Now, some of the Roman emperors that we know of during this time is very important. One is Augustus. Augustus, or Octavian as he was known, comes after Julius Caesar. There's sort of a civil war that goes on for a number of years, and eventually Augustus becomes the great ruler. And he rules during the early part of Jesus' life. And Augustus believes that he also is divine. Sort of like the kings of Europe thought they were divinely and sovereignly put into place. That's sort of what Augustus believes. And then following him is Tiberius. And Tiberius will rule during the life of Jesus, the remaining life of Jesus and the crucifixion of Jesus. So we all see all these things taking place. Now, Jesus makes reference to the Romans quite a few times, but it's really in the book of Acts and Paul where we see Rome and the influence of Rome. And also Paul was a Roman citizen, so that plays into the New Testament history. We know that later on John in the book of Revelation will refer to Rome as the evil harlot, and uses that illustration of one who is unfaithful or one who gives himself away to many others. Now there were revolts in Jerusalem after the death of Jesus. There were zealots and terrorists and Ascarius and many other who begin to develop a reign of terror. They tried to crush this. Eventually Rome becomes so fed up with it, this continuous revolts and murders that take place, that they go in and they destroy Jerusalem and destroy the temple. This was in 70 AD. And this becomes a very important marking point of history, not only for Jerusalem, but for the Jewish people as well. And we see a lot of this is recorded by Flavius Josephus, the Jewish Roman historian. Now this made the Jewish people stop and ask themselves about the justice of God. Why would God let his people, his holy people, be destroyed and rushed out of their land by pagans like the Romans? So that becomes a important question for the Jewish people, and later it also becomes a question for Christians as well. So this is just an overview of the Romans and their influence on the New Testament, and we will see that throughout, particularly when we get in the book of Acts and the epistles of Paul. Have a great week.